While you try to make sure dinner stays down after that, let me turn to Democratic strategist and syndicated columnist Karl Frisch. Karl, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Keith, and it's great to have you back.
Thank you.
On television.
No holidays for those with presidential-itis or those of us who cover them. Romney and Huntsman in New Hampshire, Bachmann and Gingrich in Iowa. Does that imply that Romney and Huntsman are for some reason de-emphasizing Iowa?
Well, I think that we've seen indications that Romney's not going to be competing there. He's not competing in the straw poll, which anybody who watches these kind of shadow primaries, which is essentially what we're in right now, know that those are bellwethers. And you know, George W. Bush won the straw poll there in 2000. I heard the crowds were really good for Romney out there. He was handing out $100 bills to anybody who would take them.
The campaign also for Mr. Romney managed to get his crowd to shout his name in something resembling unison. Does Mr. Huntsman's candidacy, which would on paper seem to be a fairly decent idea, because he's basically a cipher, he has no track record, bad or good, which is where electable Republican candidates come from. Does he have an organization in New Hampshire or anywhere else, or is this turning into a vanity race?
I think he's hoping to pull off what McCain did in 2000 against George W. Bush, which is to get kind of a flinty spirit thing going. Although I've been reading about how his own staff can't spell his name and that they keep on putting an H in his first name. So I don't know how organized he is. It's looking like the Keystone Cops on every accord for these Republican candidates. It's a gaffes aplenty kind of summer going on.
Yeah, I also seem to be late for something based on the running. Speaking of gaffes, I mean, the Gingrich campaign, I'm almost feeling sorry for him, which I really would, if he gets that message, I'm sure he will withdraw immediately. But this had already sunk into farce when everybody quit, and then 2 more staffers quit after that. This statement today, is he seeing a magic seam in the Alzheimer's and pharmacology voting blocks? Am I missing something on this?
You know, he has a long history of disappointing people in their hospital beds. His first wife, for example. You know, you know, a lot of people talk about, you know, doing deep demographic digs to get the right voters, but that's in the general election that's competitive. You know, if Newt Gingrich can't even hold together a small demographic that is his campaign staff, I'm not sure how he's going to hold together any other demographic. Yeah, you know, he's more likely to pay off his Tiffany's debt than he is to pay off his campaign debt at the end of this thing.
Yeah, and not to mock, obviously, people who are either looking for advances in medicine or who are dealing with Alzheimer's in their families, but it just seems
my grandmother died of Alzheimer's. Yeah. I think it's great that he's going after the issue, but I think for somebody who's supposedly the big thinker in the Republican Party, this is pretty small when it comes to how you win a presidential campaign.
Yeah, do something useful. Go out and advocate for Alzheimer's victims and improve pharmacology and quicker approval of experimental drugs for these devastating illnesses. Screw the president.
Or even the treatment for these people instead of taking, you know, trying to take down Obamacare.
Yes, advocate those improvements in Obamacare, if you want to use the term. Last thing about Michelle Bachmann. Campaign bus, full advance team in Iowa, as ridiculous as she sometimes sounds, especially when we're on that topic of American history. In terms of writing a little bit of it, she's skilled at this. Do we have any measure yet on fundraising and where she is relative to her rivals?
I think she's probably going to surprise a lot of people. I mean, she raised $14 million or something absurd like that in one of the previous fundraising quarters. So she's going to surprise a lot of people. And she'll be rewriting history books, not just our American history books, but also campaign books for cycles to come. Iowa has a track record of picking people in the Republican caucuses that the mainstream audience, the mainstream voters would never take. Pat Robertson, for example, winning against a sitting vice president, no less, in 1988. So she could go all in and she could win there. I don't think it says much about the Republican field that somebody like that could squeak through, though.
Democratic strategist Karl Frisch joining us on the 4th of July. Thank you for doing so, sir.
Thank you.